So, what if I told you that the most powerful way we communicate often involves, well, not saying what we actually mean? It sounds weird, but we do it every single day. We do it in ways that are funny, profound, and sometimes totally invisible to us. Let's dive into the power of not saying what you mean.
This quote from the literary critic Paul Damon, it just nails it. It's the core idea we're going to unpack today. We're going to see how the figurative language we use, all those stories and comparisons, actually shapes our reality in ways that are so much stickier and honestly more powerful than just plain literal facts.
So where do we see this in action? Well, it all starts with the language we use every single day. We are constantly, and I mean constantly, living in a world that exists way beyond the dictionary definition of words.
Think about it. When someone says something is clear as mud, or that a person is as friendly as a rattlesnake, we don't even have to think about it, right? We instantly get the real meaning, which is the complete opposite of the words being used. This is the playground of figurative language, where the real message is hiding in that gap between what's said and what's actually meant.
This leads us perfectly into our first big tool of misdirection, irony. It's the art of saying one thing while meaning something else entirely. And let me tell you, it's an incredibly powerful way to get at some deeper truths.
Okay, so irony isn't just one thing. It actually comes in three main flavors. You've got verbal irony, which is what we just talked about, saying the opposite of what you mean. Then there's situational irony. That's the classic twist, like a fire station burning down. And then my favorite, dramatic irony. That's that feeling you get when you're watching a horror movie, screaming, "Don't go in the basement," because you know something the character on screen has no idea about.
And here is a perfect example of verbal irony. Captain Renault isn't shocked at all. He's literally about to pocket his winnings from the gambling he's shocked to discover. By saying the exact opposite of what's true, he reveals his own corruption and just how ridiculous the whole situation is, all in one brilliant, witty line.
And Shakespeare, he was an absolute master of this. Right at the very beginning of Romeo and Juliet, he tells us these two families are equally dignified. But then, in the very next breath, he describes their ancient grudge breaking into new mutiny. The irony is a huge warning sign right from the start, basically telling the audience, don't take anything you hear at face value. This supposed dignity is the very thing that's going to cause all the tragedy.
Okay, so saying the opposite of what you mean, that's one powerful tool. But what about building entirely new meaning just by comparing one thing to another? Well, welcome to the world of metaphor and simile.
This might just be the most famous question in all of poetry. But see, Shakespeare isn't really just asking a question. He's using this comparison to explore huge ideas about beauty and time and even art itself. The entire poem is basically an argument that his beloved is so much better than a summer's day because their beauty can be made eternal through his words.
Now, these comparisons have two primary tools. A simile is pretty direct. It uses like or as to build a nice, clear bridge between two ideas. But a metaphor is bolder. It doesn't bother building a bridge, it just declares that one thing is the other thing, forcing our brains to make that leap and see the connection for ourselves.
And this is where it gets really, really deep. Metaphors aren't just fancy one-off phrases. Cognitive linguists argue that they are absolutely fundamental to how we think. We use these things called conceptual metaphors to understand abstract ideas, like love or time, by mapping them onto concepts that are way more concrete and physical.
Just take the idea of an argument. Isn't it wild how we almost exclusively talk about it using the language of war? We win and lose arguments. We attack and defend positions. We shoot down points. This isn't just poetry. This conceptual metaphor actually shapes how we behave. It frames disagreements as battles to be won instead of, say, a collaboration to find the truth. So, we can create meaning through opposition, and we can do it through comparison. But what about trying to evoke a feeling that's so complex there isn't even a good word for it? How do writers make us feel something without just telling us what to feel? Think about it. If a character is sad, a writer could just type, "He was sad." But that's pretty flat, right? It's not very powerful. So how do you make the reader feel that sadness deep in their bones without ever using the word sad? The poet T.S. Eliot had a famous answer for this. He called it the objective correlative. Just think of it like this. Instead of saying a character is lonely, you describe them sitting alone in a huge empty diner at 2 in the morning watching the rain streak down the window. You create an external scene, a set of objects, a situation that acts as a kind of formula for that emotion, and it triggers the feeling of loneliness in the reader automatically. You could even say that archetypal symbols are like a universal objective correlative.
Across cultures, a vast empty desert doesn't need an explanation to make us feel a sense of spiritual emptiness. We just get it. A circle communicates wholeness. These symbols come preloaded with deep emotional and psychological meaning for us.
Now, this rich, messy, layered, indirect way of communicating feels so, well, human. Which brings up a fascinating and very modern question. What on earth happens when we try to teach it to a machine?
I mean, this is a massive challenge for artificial intelligence. If an AI is trained on all our language, and we're constantly talking about demolishing arguments, how does it ever learn that we're speaking metaphorically? How does it grasp that unsaid reality that's hiding behind the words we choose?
Well, researchers are tackling this by basically trying to teach AI the same logical process that linguists use. It's a step-by-step procedure. You ask, does this word have a more basic physical meaning than how it's being used here? So for demolish, its basic meaning is about knocking down a physical building. Since an argument is not a building, bam, its use here must be metaphorical.
And you know what? The results show some pretty incredible progress. Just look at the huge jump in precision from GPT 3.5 to GPT 4. Sure, there are some slight dips and variations with the newest models, but the overall trend is undeniable. AI is getting remarkably good at spotting our metaphors. It's starting to learn the difference between what we say and what we mean.
Which brings us to our final and maybe biggest question. If a machine can identify all our irony and understand all our metaphors and decode our symbols, does that mean it truly understands the human experience behind them, or is it just getting very, very good at recognizing the patterns in our language? The answer to that really matters. It could be the difference between a helpful tool and a truly intelligent partner.